Welcome to Bedtime Whispers, where darkness comes to life and nightmares become reality. I present to you the second story, titled Something in the Entranceway. Almost 3 weeks ago tonight, I was sitting at home, watching a movie on my laptop, as usual. At some point, I put it aside and went into the kitchen to get myself something to chew on. On my way back, as I walked past the front door, I heard some inaudible noises behind it. I put the food in the room, and then went back to the door and looked through the peephole. But no one was there, and the sounds had died down. They sounded more like a woman crying, but there were differences. It was like it was muffled or something. I thought that someone had passed, so I didn't bother to think about it and went back to watch the movie. But about 10 minutes later, I heard some extraneous sounds again. I put the video player on pause and listened. The source of the sound was definitely not from a nearby apartment. Then I went to the door again to make sure, and yes, I could see some kind of shadow on the upper landing. In fact, one could not even bother. It was just that an unusual sound caught my attention, and this time it reminded me more of some kind of singing rather than crying, but it was still rather difficult to describe. It seemed to me that it was the usual drunks standing in the entranceway, probably listening to the radio. All in all, from the outside it looks extremely silly, but nevertheless, all this inconsistency and ridiculousness already then caused a little confusion. After the movie ended, my thoughts returned to those sounds, even though they were no longer audible. I had explanations, one funnier than the other, and that was how I chased the anxiety away from me. But that very night, the strangest things began to happen. I was awakened by a loud knock on the door. Naturally, I was not expecting anyone, and I immediately felt uncomfortable with this insistent sound. At a loss, I turned on the little light and the TV. For some reason, it always makes me feel less frightened. The clock showed 3:02. I started to put on my pants, at which point the banging stopped. I didn't even go to the door, went straight to the kitchen, drank some water, and went to bed only when it was light. The next day I had to go to the store. I got ready, took the money, and when I closed the door behind me, I saw the faint prints of my hands on it. This caused more mild annoyance than surprise, and I decided to brush it off when I got home. Then, as I started to wipe them off with a rag, I accidentally touched the prints and found that their surface was noticeably warmer than the surface of the door. I leaned my palm fully against the print and felt as if I were touching a real live hand. Then I came to my senses, quickly scrubbed off what I could and went home. I couldn't explain it, but subconsciously I felt that I liked the warmth of the print, as if I had received a little positive energy when I touched it. I went on with my business, though the thoughts of everything swirled in my head and prevented me from concentrating on anything. I did not manage to fall asleep either, but that night there were no sounds, no one knocking, Now strange things began to happen in the morning. I heard someone scraping against the door from outside. Not very hard, though it went on for quite a while, until I mustered up the strength to get up and look through the peephole to see who was at the door. As soon as I got close, the sound disappeared, and I saw no one on the landing in front of the door. I did not leave the house that day. Every time I passed by, I looked through the peephole hoping to see something, because I didn't even know myself what I should expect to see. But so far nothing of note had been seen, only the occasional passing occupants of the house, who, in turn, also found nothing unusual and quietly passed by. Once, though, I did happen to notice a man, whom I did not know, stop right on the landing, seem to be thinking about something, look around, hold his head, and then continue up the stairs again. I thought, hurrying up the stairs. It was closer to evening, and then I stayed up until late at night. But eventually fatigue took its toll, and I fell asleep. I was awakened by the sound of scratching at the door again. I lay under the covers for about a minute, but then I quickly got dressed and ran to the door. Just like the last time, the sound stopped immediately, and I didn't see anyone outside the peephole. This time I left the apartment, looked up and down the stairs, and listened, but there didn't seem to be a soul in the entryway. Then I turned around and saw that the palm prints were again showing up on the door, though in different places. But there were scratches all over them, as if someone had tried to erase the image with a sharp instrument. I have to explain here, the door in the apartment is a plain old door with a flat hard surface. There is another one inside, but its lock has been broken for a long time, and I don't use it. Also, there is a very narrow gap between the frame of the door and the wall above. I quickly ran to get a rag, scrubbed what I could again, and locked the door behind me. All day I walked around worried, and at about 6 p.m., when it was still light enough, I saw through the peephole. There was a distinct human shadow on the wall on the left, but there was no person or anything else that could give such a shadow. Even its very location defied any laws. There were no light sources in the opposite direction. I stared at it for a few seconds. It stood motionless, and then, as if sensing someone else's gaze, it twitched, moved away toward the window, and then quickly approached me. And then I felt a thump on the door. I jumped back, stunned, stood for a while, gathering my thoughts and spirit, and tried to pull myself together and think soberly. Whatever it was, it could not get through the door. It was a mystery, though, how something intangible could interact with tangible things. Prepared, I looked through the peephole again and saw the same thing. Something like a shadow was moving across the walls of the entryway. I watched it for a while longer. Then, still extremely frightened, but still feeling safe, I went to my room and hopelessly searched the internet for descriptions of similar cases. Of course, More than 3/4 of the articles were obvious fabrications, and other stories, though they were remotely true. I still didn't get anything useful. I didn't have much hope of that, though, but I couldn't think of anything better to do at the time. The whole time I felt the oppressive feeling that right now, a few meters away, there was something inexplicable and most likely evil, right there, right outside the front door. I never denied the existence of anything paranormal, but I never expected to encounter something like this myself. For the next 2 weeks, I just stayed inside, eating what was left over from the last time. In my small town, I couldn't even think about online food delivery, and I didn't want to put my parents in danger, and I didn't want to have to explain why I couldn't go out to get food myself. Even though I don't eat much, but I never stockpile much either, so my diet was beginning to come to an end. In addition, an unpleasant odor was beginning to emanate from the garbage can little by little. I was also in a very bad physical condition, unable to sleep and get enough sleep because of the constant stress. I thought every minute about the fact that someday I would have to open the door and face what was waiting for me. The occasional knocking on the door disturbed my mental equilibrium even more. At the end of the week, the following happened. I was walking through the hallway again in the darkness and wanted to turn on the light there, but instead I just heard a pop and realized that the light bulb had burned out. This did not make the room completely dark, but the only faint light coming in was from the window. That, of course, not counting the lamps from the kitchen, the toilet, and the room. If you turned them on, it was just as bright as before. But it was at that very moment that none of it was on. I didn't pay attention at first, walked to the kitchen, put the empty plate there, and as I walked back, I saw two shadowy hands reaching across the door through that very slit at the top of the doorway, slowly and as if searching for something to open the door. Yes, I call it a shadow just conventionally, to make it easier to understand what it all looked like. But by nature it had the opposite properties. It was becoming more and more discernible in the dark. I rushed into the room, turned on the lights there, and then quickly turned on all the other lights. And only then did I see the shadow turn pale and those hands slowly crawl back. Immediately I started rummaging through the nightstand for new light bulbs. I found two, but unfortunately, one of them was also ruined. The other turned out to be new, so I plugged it in instead of the burned out one, turned on the light, and never turned off the hallway light again after dark. The following observation was important. I was beginning to forget that it all started with that incomprehensible sound from the entryway. Something in between a cry and a song. Again, don't take it literally. I just can't find the right words to convey it. One day, while watching the movement of the shadows through the peephole, I heard it again. Just at that moment, the shadow turned sharply pale and then lost all form. gradually spilled over the entire wall and disappeared. Immediately I myself, of course, watching the pleasing sight, felt rested and refreshed. I wanted to listen to that harmonious sound again and again. I wasn't sure, but this incident and the palm prints that gave off a real warmth gave me hope that there were otherworldly entities out there, not just those that sought to harm humans. So all the food ran out, and the constant presence of someone else outside the door tired me out. Lately, if you put your ear to the door, you could even clearly hear the words, "Let us in." The words were whispered, but assertive. It couldn't go on like this. I got dressed, took the money and began to look through the peephole, to wait until at least one person passed by, because at that time the shadows either scattered or hid. I waited for a while, about 20 minutes, and an elderly woman was walking downstairs. Gathering my courage, I turned the key and opened the door. The woman saw me and gave me a strange look. I must have looked terrible. I didn't need to get used to it, though, so I closed the door and walked down the stairs. When I got out into the fresh air and threw away the bag of garbage, first I just walked around and sat on the bench. Then at the store, I bought groceries in much larger quantities than I usually took, counting on the long haul. Again, on my way home, I waited until one of the tenants came up. I quickly jumped into my apartment without closing the door, turned on the lights everywhere, despite the sun outside the window, and locked the door. All my things were in their places. There were no strange marks anywhere. Everything seemed to be the same as when I left here. Even at night there was no knocking, and I slept for quite a while, knowing that I might not be out of here for much longer lifted my spirits. And there were no shadows outside the door yet. 3 days later, there was the usual faint human knock on the door. At first, I even thought it was one of the neighbors coming in with some kind of request. But when I asked who, no one answered. And through the peephole, I saw nothing. Then I heard a loud voice from behind the door. "Let us in, too." Thank you so much for your attention. Subscribe to the channel. See you soon.